Hello, and welcome to another episode of Conversations in Quarantine, presented by the Santa Fe Opera. I'm Corey Ellison, dramaturg, and today our guest is Andrew D. Edwards, and he is our first designer to appear in this series. We've heard from quite a diverse slate of company members, including singers, of course, conductors, directors, and Andrew is our first designer. And Andrew, where are you coming to us from today?
I'm in the UK. I'm in a town called Guildford, which is about an hour out of London in the countryside. It's home for me. I'm actually in my studio today. I needed to pick up a few supplies to sort of maintain. So that's sort of my excuse for popping in here briefly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, so I'm just sort of making ends meet out in the countryside at the moment.
That sounds like a wonderful place to be. Probably things, the present situation isn't quite as in your face in the countryside as it might be had you been in London, say.
No, I mean, the thing is that I spend a lot of my time traveling for work. And so this home is my sanity as such. So when I spend so much time in cities and airports, so I'm used to coming back to find that peace of mind, but it's very strange. I must say, it sort of feels like the longest I've been in one place. 6 weeks is just a very strange routine for me. Until, but it's great. But it's great in many respects. But it's also, you're aware that outside there in London, when you talk to friends and whether it be in this country or other countries, that everybody is in lockdown, but there are people out there still trying to get to work and keep us all in good spirits, really, and safe. Yeah. That's something that a lot of our theatrical professionals have expressed, is that one of the strangest aspects of this time is the cessation of travel. Many of us are constantly on the road. So where were you when this first hit? Were you working on a production at that point? I was working on several productions at that point. I think designers often find themselves splitting between a few different things. So we have maybe that luxury or maybe that problem, whichever way you want to look at it. But I had a musical about to start rehearsals in Berlin, one about to start production in Austria. I was in the middle of rehearsals and about to start a tech period at the Globe with 3 Shakespeares. Obviously, I was in touch with Santa Fe, back and forth with the costume and scenery department for this project we're doing together. So I was about to go. I'd had a couple of weeks in the studio, and one of the things behind me, we were about to take to Berlin to present as well. And I think it was on the Thursday, and I was due to leave on the Sunday to go to Berlin, and then that didn't happen. We discussed whether we'd still go, but the sensible thing was not to get on a plane, because I think if I got on that plane, I'd have found myself stuck in Berlin, which is a great thing, but it would have been a very expensive hotel bill, I think.
Yeah.
But,
so where are you? You're, of course, you've designed Barber of Seville for us at Santa Fe, and where was that in its process at that point?
We'd been out in New York sampling all the costumes with Missy, and then most of that stuff is underway, I think, in the workshops. And since lockdowns happened, I've been in touch with her, and we're having some fit-ins and some sort of toiles being made up over the internet. And it's the great language that we have these days, that we can have Skype meetings or Zoom meetings and still look at things and sketch on photos and keep that dialogue running, which is great, because it means we can keep moving forward during this time. And the set was all built, so I've been in touch with Mark and Mike, and all of that was sort of where it needed to be. So that's all in a great place. So it's where it is for the moment, but it's an exciting project which we will hopefully still be working towards. But we'll see.
It's interesting. We've spoken to composer and librettist, and for them things are a little different, because you can really still proceed with a lot of your work. But I think for designers and directors, certainly it's better than being a performer, where you just really can't do much of anything in this situation. But for you, I imagine that part of your work is solitary in the studio, and you can proceed with things like that. The aspect that takes place in the theater, that's something else again.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about what I do is that you have those different segments to our process. So I get that to design on my own. I get that time with the director collaborating, where you sort of add one more person into the equation, and then you get the time, whether it be from a scenic point of view with the workshops or in the rehearsal room with the performers, bringing it all together. And that's sort of what I love about it. So designers spend quite a lot of time in isolation with their own thoughts anyway. So in some ways, it's not that different for us. It's more being stuck in one place, which is the trick. But it's also been a great opportunity. I've got projects coming up. Luckily, at the end of the year, there's been a lot of rescheduling going on, and fingers crossed, if theatres reopen towards the end of the year, which we all hope for our industry, it will. Then I've sort of tried to make the most of this opportunity to actually go back through some of my designs and just check they're all up to where I wanted them to be, because when you're juggling a few things at the same time, it's good to stay on top of things. So it's been nice to take this month's pause as such. So.
Yeah, it allows for a little bit more perfectionism in our work in some capacities, doesn't it?
Yeah, the OCD in me is getting the better of me at the moment.
Right, I can relate. So what does a day in your life look like these days? Have you established a sort of a routine, or are you just sort of playing it by ear?
Yeah, as much as my normal life doesn't have much of a routine, I am a creature of habit. So, and I have two little ones. So at the moment, I'm homeschooling them during the day, which is actually a great thing and a great distraction for me. And our day starts with a walk every day. We go out and clear our heads, because I think it's important for them still to have that. We're near nature anyway, but it's important for them to get out and clear their heads and have an exercise and just let them free think for an hour before we start our day. And then we do a bit of home learning, and then so they're my 9 to 5. And then after that, I then have my own therapy, which is drawing and going through my work and still creating, really.
Oh, that's great. How old are your kids?
They're 7 and 5, and it's sort of their imaginations are what keeps me going. I find one of the things I love about what we all do is that we continually learn from each other, whether it be in the arts industry or, I hope, in any sort of occupation. But it's amazing how much I learn from them still. They keep me on my toes and actually push my imagination back to where it should be. We sort of think as we grow up, we set rules on ourselves, and actually it's creating that freedom of children's imagination, which I think keeps us most liberal with our thoughts and most exciting in the work that we produce.
Really? What do they make of the situation right now? Have you explained to them why they're not in school and what the situation is?
Yeah, we've talked to them quite a bit about it, and at times what I find inspiring by them is their inner strength to sort of understand the predicament and carry on, even though they're all missing their friends like crazy. I mean, and we all are as well, but we can comprehend it a little bit more. But for small children, they really, you tell them, oh, it's going to be another 2 weeks of lockdown now, and they're like, no, they're like, I want to go back to school. And you're like, well, that's good, but it's their strength to sort of still keep their routine and still learn and still create and still smile. It's good, but there is a lot of, I've sort of started turning the radio off, because there's a lot of talk about death and the death numbers, and that starts to sort of just, get inside the head a little bit. So I think we have to be respectful of that with our kids as well. But, there's no point, I don't believe in sort of hiding the truth from them. Though.
Right. Yeah. Of course, the upside is that there are going to be a lot of kids out there that will be very happy to go back to school once that happens.
Yeah. Hopefully that is the case. Yeah. But it's and I must say it's wonderful, the sort of the work all the teachers are doing. you know, they're putting online for parents and supporting us all through the best means they can over the internet. And I think it's such a healthy thing. But at the same time, it's, you know, the teachers, when the kids go back to school, they will get them educated and they will get them back up to scratch. That's their job and that's what they do and that's what they're fantastic at. I think our job as parents at this time is to keep them sane and keep them level, because if they go back with emotional issues and traumatized from this period of time, then teachers can't solve that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what have you found to be the biggest challenge of this time? You've talked a bit about the upsides personally, but what have you found to be challenging?
I think the optimism. I generally am an optimistic person, but I think I think I was listening to one of your recordings with somebody else, and I have to agree that, you know, we're all hitting those moments during the day where you have to pick yourself up and, you know, you have to tell yourself it's all going to be okay and have that sense of hope. And I think it's a good lesson in inner strength. And I think that's been one of the biggest challenges to sort of go through, is just knowing that it will get better. And then, I mean, the only thing I sort of always try and tell myself is that being a self-employed practitioner within an arts industry is that we've been through a few of these hurdles before and we've come out the other side. And I've got a bit of that experience under my belt. I feel my heart goes out to sort of the younger creatives that are in the industry, where it's you know, they haven't been through those hurdles so much. But yeah, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, I think it doesn't matter how much experience. It's hard for us all. You know, you can have a good 3 days and then it hits you from left field. So I think that's one of the things.
Yeah. What are there things that this has given you the time to do or think about that you don't normally have you been able to engage in any activities that you wouldn't normally have time for? Or...
Yeah, I've been exercising a lot. Which has been really nice. I sort of took the winter off from it because I like to either run outside or work out, and the weather's been horrible here in the UK, as it can be, but we've actually just had 6 great weeks of sunshine, and it's an escapism for me. It's somewhere you can just completely disappear for an hour and just vent your whatever it is out that way. But so that's one thing I've been doing and had the time for, which I don't normally have the time for. And the other thing has been, I've been doing a bit of reading and dreaming of ideas. I think as you go through different projects, you sort of pick up on ideas and write them down and sketch things out. And it's nice also to have this time to think about how you could put those things into action. And I've been talking to my agent about a couple of projects that I want to get off the ground, or and I've just been reading a couple of books that I've been wanting to read for ages. So it's been nice to have.
What's the most interesting thing you've been reading during this time?
It's not the most positive thing. I've been reading a book called Our Bodies, Their Battlefield, What War Does to Women, which is a book by Christina Lamb, which is about the reality of war and the real issues behind it, and the women that are raped and pillaged and how they are used as weapons during war times, and how that goes back to the start of, goes back so far. It's horrific, and that it still goes on today. I'm doing a musical in Germany, in Berlin, hopefully at Christmas, and there's a part in it which is about a young girl being raped, and her mother says this is what happens. It's just post Second World War, and this is one of the things that happens during war. And then we have a program in the UK called Women's Hour.
Oh yes, I know that very well. Yes,
which is very within the design community. And I was listening to an interview with Christina Lamb, and I just had to read the book. And it does 2 things. It reminds you in this time how privileged we all are, because there are people who are, by being isolated, are going through bigger problems. And I think, I don't read it to make myself feel better. I actually read it to hopefully inspire me to find a way to sort of tell these stories and start conversations like this where we can, you know, get these things discussed and bring them to the front. And I hope that, you know, that's sort of what I hope from this time, is that people will read those books they've been wanting to read and start talking about those things that we've been needed to talk about for a bit more time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I've been reading that, which isn't so positive, but I've also been reading the horrible histories with my kids, which is fantastic. So
a
I can
little bit
highly recommend
lighter.
that.
Yeah. What are you most looking forward to getting back to once we've gotten through this time?
Um, Apart from setting foot in another country, just to sort of see other friends, and it's not a reason to run away. It's actually just I just love that feeling when you step off a plane into somewhere new and new experiences. But I'm looking forward to sitting in a cafe and having a good espresso and watching the world go by again. You know, not in a complete normality that we have or had, but I love people watching. It's what sort of where I get ideas from, and you know, I spend my life looking at people's shoes and coats and collars and being inspired by that for the work I do. And I can't wait to do that. And I'm also really looking forward to somebody else mixing me a martini rather than myself. It's sort of
That's a wonderful thing to aspire to. And
that's what hope should be about, I think, some days.
Amen. And on that note, I want to thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Sharing your thoughts, and look forward to meeting you live and in person.
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you so much, Andrew.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.